Hello, hello. Welcome to another post-game recap for Iowa women's basketball. Today, discussing their 113 to 90 win over Drake Sunday night. I think it goes without saying that was a really fun game to watch. It's just you got to give the people what they want, and I think both teams gave the people what they want: points, buckets galore. A lot of fun to watch. So much like a tennis game where it's just like your head's just going back and forth. Both teams playing at breakneck pace, shooting the ball well, moving the ball well on offense. Just a really fun game to watch, and thankfully Iowa was up to the task because that Drake team really does force you to score a lot of points to match their offense with the way they move the ball. But again, just a very free-flowing game, a contrast to the game Thursday night against Kansas State. Iowa lost. Much different game. Played at Iowa's pace, much more free-flowing. While Drake does a lot offensively well, some problems there defensively. They gave Iowa a little bit too much space at times, and Iowa's a really good basketball team. We move the ball. We shoot the ball well when we do have space, and our players aren't passive. If they're open, they're going to take it. And we move the ball well to find those open shooters, and that's Iowa showed exactly why everyone thinks so highly of them in this game. Just great ball movement, much crisper passing than Thursday night. Where I felt like the passing was always off in that game. The passing generally was spot on in this game. And it's great to see Iowa get back in the mark. I think what I think I saw on like social media that 115 was a program record. So damn near came close to a program record against a quality opponent in Drake. So that was great to see. Iowa get back to their comfort zone. And when it comes to finding your comfort zone, man, Kate Martin in the short corner against the zone, oh my lord. She just diced Drake up all day long from that spot. Again, short corner, along the baseline, in that 10 to 15 foot area, just consistently finding those pockets of space against that 2-3 matchup zone. And she got the ball there, made that couple mid-range jumpers, took the ball strong, finished up through contact. That was great to see. That was like, that was just an outstanding game. And she always has the expression where it's like, you can never tell. She just always looks so exhausted. She's just giving 100 million% out there. And it's just like, man, she always looks exhausted. But she's fun to watch for sure. And that was a really outstanding performance from there. Again, finding those pockets of space against that 2-3 matchup zone. Just fun to watch her. Just pretty much money all game long. I think she will probably, like, she had a really good game though, but like, man, like Grace Berg gave her a lot of business on the other two. That's a really good player for Drake. Did a really good job moving up the ball and like her positioning to like seal and reseal Kate to get the open up the angle for her teammates to pass ball to her. It's like, oh my god, she's a really good player. You don't always get appreciation for a player just based off the stat lines or whatever. You have to really watch them in person to get that appreciation. And this game's like, oh yeah, you really get that feel. And Drake again, like the thing about Drake is, and on one hand, it's like, okay, they want to play at Iowa's pace too, and that's a problem in the sense like, okay, like you're trying to get caught up in a track meet against Iowa, and Iowa naturally has more talent. Not that Drake doesn't have talent, but Iowa has Caitlin Clark, Kate Martin has showed up here, and there's other talented players for Iowa too. So Drake's generally not going to win that kind of matchup. But man, some of their passing is just like, oh my lord. So I think just kind of like interesting. I just want to shout this because it's just insane to me. So I don't know as many of Drake's tendencies as probably the Iowa players do, just because they naturally went through their scouting beforehand. I can assure that they know a lot more about the ins and outs of Drake's offense, emotion offense than I do. But there's a couple tendencies you can pick up just watching the game. And one trend I noticed, and it was just crazy to watch. So they hit us with a lot of cuts coming from the top of the key. So just kind of want to illustrate. And you could say like, oh god, bad defense from Iowa. But honestly, like, no, this is just insane pass. And I felt like giving it a shout out. So what you often have is, this is the point guard right here. And consistently, a couple of times you saw, what they would do is just swing the ball, two passes to whatever side of the wing that it could be either wing, doesn't really matter. And this point guard would just straight cut to the rim, coming off a back screen from generally the center at the elbows. And Iowa didn't switch this action. We were just asking whoever was guarding the point guard to just get over that screen and get back to try and cover the pass. But the thing about it is, like, Drake is just such an elite passing team. Like, when people talk about great passing, it's like, okay, just like how many assists you get per game. And honestly, like, that's part of it. At the same time, it's like there's plenty of like passers, guys who get a lot, or girls who get a lot of assists, who really aren't that good at passers when you actually watch them live. But Drake's honestly like, oh my god, no, there's great passers. And there was one time that, and poor Sharon, I again, like, I say poor Sharon, say I don't want to say it in the sense that she was doing anything wrong in this one session. And a couple of players got beat by Iowa in this pass. I just noticed this one time. So you would have Sharon generally in the middle lane, and what she would try and do is just drop back a little bit, just to try and cover that pass, to take away that passing angle. And there was one time where I swear to God, the pass, like, and she's in position, like, you can tell, like, just watching Sharon's body language, she thinks she has it covered. And, like, against most teams, she really would have had it covered. But, like, again, Drake would just, like, swing the ball to the wing, the point guard cut through, and I swear, like, it was such a great pass this one time. Like, it would honestly be like, I feel like if you like really zoomed in, you might see like Sharon's like hair move or something. It was that close to grazing her. Like, they just threw a pass right, pretty much as close to her head as theoretically possible. And it's like, it's no wonder that Sharon thought she had it covered, because it's like, it literally took a perfect pass just to like get that layup. But that's what Drake was capable of. Like, oh my god, like, and they killed Iowa with this similar action like 4 or 5 times throughout the course of the game. Like, oh my god, that was really tough to guard. So, like, and the thing about that kind of action, I should probably redraw it now. Don't erase it. So the thing about this action is, I think you really need consistent ball pressure. Because like, it's pretty obvious that Drake is just too good a passing team. If you give their passers any amount of space to get a clean look at a pass, they're going to nail a perfect pass pretty much every time. And I thought that was really important. You saw Caitlin get a quadrillion steals in this game. A quadrillion, 7 steals, tomato. But it really was super important for her to be that active. I don't normally... I mean, steals are a defense stat you can go by. I think they might be a little overemphasized. But again, they're an important defensive stat to look at. But that ball pressure is really necessary when you're playing a team like Drake. Because again, if you give their passers too much space, they're just going to pick you apart, because they're just elite passing pretty much everybody. And it was really on display in Iowa. And I thought Caitlin really getting after their guards, trying to get in passing lanes, try and get her hands, pressure the ball, and maybe see if she can get a tip here or there. That was really important. And I said in the preview for this, the turnover margin was going to play a big factor when we won this game. How many more turnovers did Iowa, or I should say Drake, have than Iowa? They had 9 more turnovers, 22 turnovers altogether. Iowa had 13, but it was a 15% turn percentage, which isn't terrible. It's good, I would say. It's about where Iowa would generally want to be. Although at least she's a perfectionist, she'd probably want closer to 10, which is elite. But Iowa took better care of the ball than Drake did. A couple passes here and there, but generally much better care of the ball than Drake did. And really did a good job, particularly Caitlin, applying that ball pressure that you really needed to get Drake's offense thrown off a little bit. Because if that didn't happen, I mean, Drake could have very easily scored 100, and they're really putting game pressure on Iowa if that doesn't happen. And Caitlin often gets credit for offensive stats because it's just kind of obvious. But you do have to credit, it's like, okay, that's the kind of defense performance that really impacted this game. It would have been potentially a single-digit game, even with Iowa scoring 113 points, if it weren't for that defensive impact. I thought I would give a shout-out. And there's a number of players, like, I guess I don't know if there's a number of players who stood out defensively just because you give them 90 points, like, there's going to be a lot of issues there. But kind of like one underrated performance I kind of wanted to give a shout-out to is Kylie Feuerbach in defense. And again, you kind of notice some tendencies from Drake, and just any team you watch when you play them, just when you watch them play just a little bit. And again, I'm not going to pretend I know as much as the Iowa women do. They actually went through the scouting process. I'm just casually watching the game. Just kind of one trend I noticed. And so I'm not going to draw out every single player, but generally what you would see for Drake is let's actually just give numbers to these players. So Drake's 5, their center. That's not a 5. I don't know what that is. A 5 and whatever position. Let's say a 4 is here. No, it probably would have generally been a 3 or 2 or 1 because Berg wouldn't have been this position. But anyway, so what you often see from Drake is when this center at the top of the key and she swung the ball to either side, then she would proceed to motion just towards the block, the strong side. Again, could it be either direction? If she passed to this side, she would dive to this end. If she passed to this, she would dive to this end. Draw the defenders. She would generally dive to strong side block. A couple of times, though, she also motion. She faked that motion that she was going to the block and then set a cross screen for generally Grace Berg. And Grace would maybe be the one up on the block on the strong side, and they would try and work the ball to her in the post. And kind of one thing, and like that's just kind of a tendency you notice when you watch a team play enough. And I thought I would shout this out because like this is to me is like a scouting report steal. This is like a case of a player who's, and most player again, Lise is not going to allow these players to not pay attention in film room and on the scouting report. I can guarantee you that. But some players are better at understanding than others, and I just thought this was a great example from Kylie. Where she really read this well. She was waiting for that cue. She was like, okay, it's like, and actually, yeah, she probably would have been in this spot, because she was guarding somebody in the corner at the time. So what you had here is you had their 5. I believe it was that Miller, if I remember correctly. Dive here, and the entire time she was motioning, she was waiting, seeing like, okay, are you gonna come? Are you gonna come? And the thing about Drake is they have shooters at all 5 positions. So when you pass this ball here, like it's hard to necessarily give help here. You can't show too early because if you show too early, Drake's gonna see that and just gonna kick the corner, and they're gonna get a wide open 3, and they're an elite shooting team. They didn't make them Sunday night. I think Iowa did a generally good job of giving the right people open shots. We generally gave players like Anna Miller open 3s who shoot below 30% in the year. I think Iowa did good scouting on that part. But you can't leave this corner too early if you're Kylie, just because if you do, it's like they're going to see that and kick to the corner. So she's really biding her time, waiting like, okay. And then the moment she gets an inkling, it's like, boom, right there. And she read the play really well. Led to a run out. I thought I would give a shout out. And I imagine earned a shout out in the film room study too that they had after the game, whether it be Monday, Tuesday, whatever. It's like, oh hell yeah, that was really good job reading the play. And with Kylie, like a lot of other Iowa players, you expect a lot of hustle, a lot of energy, and she brought that. I thought she also brought aggression offensively, hit the open shot, she attacked the rim, she showed aggression there. But I thought I would highlight her defense. You kind of watch her play. It's kind of one of those things like, yeah, it's like, I think in a normal day, she might have been able to earn my Defender of the Game award and Defender/Hustler of the Game award. And I think she's a strong contender for that still. So I think in a normal day, she probably would have won it. Just not just from that play, but just like watching her overall. It's like getting on the floor, etc. But even if she doesn't win the award, I make no mistake about it. I thought she had a really good defensive game, and I thought that would give a shout out. I thought that shout out that one play where it's like, okay, she did a really good job of reading that dive to the block and like seeing like, okay, is she coming or not? And the moment she got an inkling, boom, steal. But yeah, geez. But again, like also really aggressive offensively. But I will say like a couple of her, she has a tendency on her post feeds to like lob the ball when she didn't need to. There were a couple times I kind of got Iowa's post players in trouble. That would probably be the only really critique I would have is like a little too much air on some of those post feeds when it wasn't really necessary. But overall, a very good game. Is there anything else I want to touch on defensively? And again, the main thing about playing a team like Drake is you really have to have consistent ball pressure. And I won't say that Iowa's ball pressure was necessarily probably as consistent as Lisa would have wanted, but I think there are some players who definitely shined in that area, particularly Caitlin. And I guess while I'm on the subject of Caitlin, transitioning to what she does in the offensive end, it's like, again, it's one of those cases where I think Drake was just, it's hard really when you go your entire life playing defense a certain way and you have to adjust it for one singular player that is Caitlin Clark. Because again, like you go your entire life and you say to yourself, like, okay, it's like, I'm far out enough defensively. I'm okay. Like my feet are just a little bit beyond 3-point line, or my feet are maybe touching 3-point line. I'm in position to take away the 3-point shot where I am right now, but it's just not with a player like Caitlin Clark. If you give her, if she's like, what, say like 25 feet out, if you gave her like 3 to 5 feet of room, it doesn't really matter where she shoots it from. That's just too much space. And Drake didn't necessarily get beat by it all the time. Caitlin missed her first couple, although a good chunk of them were online, so you can tell, like, oh, you keep giving her that, she's going to make it. And turns out later in the game she didn't make it. You can only give her too many cracks of the apple before she starts going crazy there. And the "Are you not entertained?" pose is like, oh yeah, that's just her having fun. It's great to see. So sometimes it's just the 180 behind the head pass she tried earlier. It's like, it's great to know that even though she's grown, she's maturing as a player. She's gained a lot more experience in what she can and can't do. It's still kind of fun to know she still has a little kid inside her. It's like, let me just try this. That's great to see. You don't want to lose that enthusiasm for the game. It's supposed to be fun. And I don't know if Lisa agrees with me in that situation, but it kind of reminds you when, like, again, you're playing a video game, you just try, like, I don't know, like some like 360 shot in like Call of Duty or something. It kind of reminded me of that. It kind of reminded me of like when I was 8 trying to pull off stuff like that online, just video game. It's like, oh, that's just fun. That's just fun to see. I could criticize it, but I don't really want to. And she had that was really the only bad term she had in the game. There were she had like 3 turnovers, but 2 of those were like just drop passes that were great passes that just the player didn't catch them for whatever reason. But you can't give Caitlin too much space there. And a couple times just Drake got caught giving her too much space. And again, it's hard when, again, you're also playing 2-3 zone, so you're maybe sitting off a little bit there. Giving some space at 3-point line. That's part of it in fairness. But like when you're just not used to necessarily a player being as comfortable as they were shooting for like 25, 28 feet, what have you. But yeah, in general, Drake gave us a little bit too much space, and it's not just Caitlin. It was a variety of other shooters. And it's really nice to see Iowa get their other shooters involved. I noted in the Kansas State game how Iowa only had 5 3-point attempts from players not named Caitlin Clark. And like the thing is, like, you can say, like, okay, it's like, I just don't think you can say you have a bad shooting game if you only took 5 3-point shots. That isn't, to me, that just means you didn't give yourself a chance to have a good game. And that's kind of weird to say, I guess. That might be too critical. But to me, it's like, okay, 5 3-point attempts is just not enough of sample size to really say honestly whether you had a good or bad shooting day. It's like you need more sample size. And I think you got just more shooting volume for Iowa supporting cast in this game. 13 3-point attempts compared to 5 the other night for Iowa supporting cast. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what you want. You want to spread the ball. You want to share the ball. You want to find your open shooters. Again, against that 2-3 zone, you have to move the ball well. And Iowa found those pockets of space that led to wide open threes. Because we're a really good passing team. And it's nice in general to see, like, you kind of look at Iowa's turnover numbers throughout the beginning of this year. A really good job there. 93rd percentile in turnover percentage throughout the course of the season. So, and you top that off with 96th percentile in terms of assists per game. I imagine I don't necessarily have assist to turnover ratio. Oh, I do have assist to turnover ratio here. 95th percentile assist to turnover ratio. Iowa's passing the ball really well. Besides that Kansas State game where I think you got to credit Kansas State more for that, Iowa's really passing the ball well throughout the course of throughout this year so far. And I think that really showed itself in this game. So, I think what I kind of want to talk about, maybe just a little bit, is maybe Iowa's like rotation players in the bench here. Again, you have a chance to look at some players in necessary garbage time. You don't want to call it garbage time because Drake was, I guess, within 20, but it was still, the game was in hand. And I guess one thing we'll say, and I thought this was a good thing to see. I haven't talked about Kenise Johnson yet throughout the course of these videos I've done so far. But I thought she had a nice little sequence there near the end of the game where she did a good job driving baseline but not picking up her dribble. A lot of times with young players, they just have a tendency to pick up their dribble and like the play then dies, they get swarmed and they're not able to either get a shot or pass off. Did a nice job driving baseline there and found Addie open for a mid-range jumper near the elbow. And Addie didn't make it, but again, you have to be process-oriented with this kind of stuff. You can't get absorbed with the makes or misses. You just have to think like, okay, it's like, that was a really good job of Kenise keeping the ball alive and like giving herself a chance to get an assist there potentially. And I guess we'll also shout out Taylor McCabe. A couple threes made in this game. Got on the floor one time that I saw. It's great to see that kind of hustle because again, you kind of, I talked about this. I think she has like the ability to make the kind of contested 3-point shots that I don't necessarily think a lot of other players in this roster necessarily can make. Iowa has a lot of players who can maybe make an open three or maybe a three with a little bit of space. Maybe not contested three necessarily so much. You get that vibe though from Taylor that she can make the kind of three. So you kind of need to see like, okay, the overall floor game start to develop a little bit. And I think it's nice to see again a player get on the floor, be the first to the floor, and force a jump ball. That's just good to see. Though I will say, just being a little bit critical of her defense, there was one time a Drake player had the ball, and Drake generally doesn't get a lot of their points by one-on-one play. It's generally through cutting off the ball or driving kicks maybe for open shooters or post-ups. They got a lot of points from Berg or Miller in the post-game Sunday night. They don't do a whole lot of necessarily beating you one-on-one off the dribble. And again, that's kind of why I was trying to pressure the ball at times. Like, okay, it's like they're not necessarily going to be off the dribble. But I think it was a little disappointing because there was one sequence, I forget the exact time, where a Drake player had the ball along the left wing. And you can kind of see Taylor, she's showing, or I guess stunting, to take away the baseline a little bit. And that Drake player's left hand, she's on the left wing. And she's showing that way. Yet she still gets beaten that way. That was a little disappointing to see. Again, not necessarily because like you're beat off the dribble. It's like you were trying to take away that side and you still got beat there. Just a little bit of defensive improvement probably necessary there. Because again, if she can keep improving defensively, she's got the shooting to really change this team. I mean, you saw against Kansas State, like maybe Iowa can maybe use some of that contested shot making against a really good defense like Kansas State, who's applying ball pressure, trying to drive our shooters off the 3-point line, trying to take away those open threes. And a player like that can be really useful to help break the seal against a defense like that. But the defense still needs to come along just a little bit in order to give her the amount of playing time that I'm sure she wants. But she made a good impact in this game. I thought I would give a shout out to her again be on the first on the floor on possession. Because again, those are the kind of plays that if they keep building up, she will find herself some playing time. She'll make an impact for this team positively. Gosh. So I think another thing I could probably talk about is just some of what we did against their 2-3 zone. There's like two kind of trends I noticed that Iowa ran against their 2-3 zone. I think it's a matchup, so it's not necessarily like if you're talking from a defensive structure standpoint, like if you're talking about the matchup zone, like okay, this is the point guard number one here. they're not necessarily going to stay there the entire session. They might move down to the corner if they're guarding somebody and they have to stay with them, and then three will fill in from them. They'll just change spots. So matchup zone, again, it's a zone defense, but it has some man principles. You're not necessarily beholden to just stay in one spot the entire time. And one conscious trend I kind of noticed, Iowa run against their matchup zone is a horn set. So again, what's not necessarily everyone knows what a horn set is. It's nothing too complicated, and you can run a variety of actions around this. So I guess it's probably easier to see if I have circles. I don't know if it'd be easier to see, but whatever. So in a horn set, pretty easy to tell, and you can do a variety of things from its actions. This is just the beginning station of it. So you have two post players at the elbows, or your 4 and 5 at the elbows, what have you, and shooters in the corner, with the point guard up top. Just the start of your horn set. And you can do a variety of things. You can set pin down maybe for this player in the corner here. You can have both posts set a ball screen, and then the point guard be able to choose which way they want to go. There's a variety of things you can do, but this is just the basic start of it. So out of that set, it gave Iowa a numbers advantage at the top. I mean, you can see there's two players guarding three. And what Drake did is, I talked a little bit earlier how Drake was generally giving Caitlin probably more space than most teams would probably allow in their zone look. But there were a couple times when they would run this, when Iowa would have this horn set look. And Drake, again, there's man principles to a matchup zone. Drake would have one of their players at the elbows go out there and guard Caitlin Clark. Now, if you're counting, again, Iowa still has a 3-2 advantage. And this other player at the top of the key for Drake now has to choose between guard and two. And there were a couple times when Drake kind of made a poor choice, and they closed out to probably who they shouldn't. So again, like if you're thinking, okay, this is Iowa's 5 and this is Iowa's 4 in this offense. So like let's say this is Sharon Goodman. Not really a shooter. It's just not her game, which is fine. She does a lot of other things well, but it's not really her game. And Drake would just close out to her and try and take away that. And what I would do is Sharon would just make a simple pass to the other player at the top of the key, and they would get a wide open 3, or maybe this player for Drake would then come out to contest this, and it would just leave someone else in the corner. Iowa got Drake a couple times like that. It's like, okay, it's like that's kind of honestly a breakdown of Drake's problem, where they chose the wrong player. I think that might be something Iowa looks to do going forward against like a 2-3 zone, maybe in the future. But I think most teams are probably going to be like, okay, we're probably just going to leave either Hannah, Sharon, or Addie open for that mid-range shot. I don't know if it would necessarily work that well against a different team, truthfully. But it's just I think Iowa got either 2 or 3 wide open 3-point looks out of that horn set against the 2-3 zone, where they were trying to extend out Caitlin. And it makes sense to extend out Caitlin in that sense. I mean, like, she's open when she steps in the gym, but it just created a numbers advantage that Iowa just exploited a couple times that I saw. And I think I should also, this was something else I want to shout out. I want to shout out, or at least bring attention to like Sharon Goodman in the post. Had a really good offensive game. 7 for 11 from the field. Weirdly off with her left hand, I would say, for some reason. I don't remember having many issues finished with her left hand, but it felt like a lot of her misses came with that left hand. But I wouldn't worry too much about that. Maybe something to keep an eye on for the future, but whatever. But like, showed off some really good post moves again, and she's really, I think, probably separating herself as maybe the most skilled player in the post for Iowa through just the first couple games. And that could obviously change. Players could be better. But I think that's just kind of where I'm at from just a pure skill standpoint in the post. And gosh, there was one move really early on in the game that was a really good up and under, where she, tries to turn, faked a left-hand hook over right shoulder, came back to her left-hand shoulder and right-hand hook, but like that, when she came up for a right hook, you saw Miller kind of like jump to contest it, and then she pivoted straight to go back to a left hook, and because Miller left her feet, she like jumped right into Sharon and she fouled her. It's like, I thought that was like, ooh, that was a really good post move. Keeping your feet. Getting the defender off balance, able to draw fouls. Like, I thought that was that was a good one. And again, I noted how she pulled off that Megan Gustafson move. I think it was in the Virginia Tech game where she lifted her pivot foot to give herself a little bit more room on the hook shot. You can tell she's the most advanced, I think, so far, post score from just a pure skill standpoint for Iowa as of right now. Though weirdly, I think I might start paying more attention. Like, okay, it's like, do we maybe have like a right hand dependence? But I don't want to say anything. I probably would need to see more before I come to a conclusion either way, whether she's a little too right hand dominant. But I don't think so, from what I remember. But again, I could be wrong or right on that. I don't honestly remember. I think when it comes to Sharon, and I made note in the last game how I thought Addie maybe played the best defense of any of our three centers on Ioka Lee. I thought she did the best job of pushing around. I think it's a case where, like, I think Hannah is still the starter for Iowa because I think she just naturally plays into the way Iowa wants to play really well. Her speed really plays into the fast pace that Iowa wants to play with. So I think from that standpoint, I still think Hannah is the best fit for what Iowa wants to do. And she does a lot for Iowa beyond just that speed. Moves well, plays defense, is able to finish around the rim through contact, and has an improving shooting game. But when it comes to the backup center position, I think in that debate versus Sharon Addie, it really depends on what we need in a particular game. I think there are some games where, like, okay, maybe you're not playing through the post so much, and I might want to see maybe Addie a little bit more just because maybe she's a little bit further ahead defensively. But in a game like this where you really need that consistent offensively, you need somebody to provide some help for, again, a Caitlin Clark maybe. I think Sharon is the best fit for that kind of game. And that's just a personal opinion. But it's just kind of like where I'm at. It's like, okay, it's like both have their strengths and weaknesses. I just think like it kind of depends on what Iowa needs in a particular game. So I think, I don't know. I think that's for the most part everything I want to talk about. I think that's fine. So I think we can get into awards. Defense/hustle player game. Again, there's a couple players like I think I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Sid. 4 steals, like always getting on the floor again. She's her usual self. I'm almost underplaying at this point just because it's almost too expected for her to be really good defensively. But she made an impact defensively for sure. And I also, again, I want to give a shout out to Kylie. I think in a normal kind of game, she would have probably been a really good contender for defensive player game. But I do have to give it to Caitlin Clark. She was really impactful on the perimeter and was able to disrupt Drake at times so throw their offense off enough to give Iowa enough space to win comfortably. It was really important. Again, 7 steals, I think it's hard to argue with that. And when a game like this, when it really comes down to both teams are able to score really well, often it comes down to like, okay, forcing the other team to just make some mistakes, and that's where those steals come in. Forcing 22 turnovers. Caitlin was a huge part of that, so that really was important. And the overall game ball, though, like, it's kind of crazy. I give Caitlin the Defensive Player of the Game award, and she scores 35 points. And honestly, like, it's still a really tough game ball to give out because, like, man, like Kate Martin was just so good, and she probably would say she could have played better defensively. But man, she was still so good from the offensive side of the floor, just finding space and consistently making plays against that 2-3 matchup zone. But it's a tough. I really do want to shout that out. Again, if it was a normal day, it's a Kate Martin game ball, but I still have to give Caitlin Clark another game ball. She gets her first, I guess, sweep, I don't know, of the year, defense and game ball overall. But again, really impactful. Several great post feeds, hidden from 3, able to drive to the rim and score through contact, playing defense at a pretty good level. I mean, it's really hard not to give to someone Caitlin when she really excels the way she did in this game. So she earned it. So she'll get the first sweep of the year, defense and game ball overall. So I guess moving beyond, I guess it's time to get into previews. So I won't be doing anything from the Gulf Coast Showcase. Yeah, it's the Gulf Coast Showcase, I think it was. Down in Florida. Yeah, Florida. I won't be doing anything for that just because it's the holidays, and with so many sports going on at once, I kind of don't want to like do men's and women's videos. I would rather spend that time with family. If I don't want to. I'm doing these videos for fun. I'm not doing it to work, and I feel like if I have to like, with so much going on, I just feel like I wouldn't be able to sleep, and I don't want to spend the holidays restless. I'd like to get some sleep, so I'll follow along, but I just won't do any videos recapping the games. But I still can preview these games. So first game against Purdue Fort Wayne. Not the strongest opponent, honestly, to start. You kind of like look at their So you kind of look at them. Just some things I note down. Very heavily reliant on points in the paint. But the interesting thing is they don't really have great positional size. They don't have like any dominant center or anything. Their tallest player is 6'1", I thought I saw listed. A lot of their other players are just typical guard size you expect from mid-major like this. So that was just kind of odd to see. Only 17th percentile on 3-point attempt rate, so the guards aren't getting up threes either. They're probably just like a attack off the bounce kind of team based off that. I'm not sure if that's really going to be that much of a test for Iowa. Just Iowa has good defenders. Iowa has good positional size. We're probably going to be able to contest a lot of those drives and make those drives difficult for Florida. Or did I say Florida? Purdue Fort Wayne. We're probably going to be able to make it difficult for Purdue Fort Wayne from that standpoint. Yeah, and they played a really slow pace too. They're only allowing Purdue Fort Wayne 4 fast break points a game, which I guess in theory, maybe if the talent levels were closer, I think would be a challenge for Iowa, because I think Iowa showed a little bit of struggles against Kansas State in a half-court oriented game. But even with that slow pace of play that Purdue Fort Wayne plays, the talent gap is just probably too much still. They lost to 19 to a Michigan team who's good but not necessarily great. Yeah, I don't know if this is going to be that much of a test. They seem a little bit too reliant on the paint, which, given their lack of size, just tells me they're probably not going to be able to test Iowa enough defensively to keep up with the offense that Iowa's going to put on the floor. They're going to play a slow pace, and I think it'll give you a chance to see what Iowa's capable in a half-court setting. But I don't know if I would necessarily expect it to be a close game. The semi-final matchup's a little bit more interesting. You have two mid-major teams who are both in the top 100 in net rating so far. So you have quality mid-majors there. I think most people know about Florida Gulf Coast. A lot of 3-point attempts. They take 49% of their attempts are from 3-point range, which is 99th percentile, which pretty much means like, yep, no one puts it up more than Florida Gulf Coast does. And it's another team that plays at a really slow pace. That's pretty much the strategy if you're mid-major pulling off upsets. They beat Kentucky at home earlier this year, if I remember correctly. Weird thing about that is they only shot 5 for 30 from 3 in that game, which is interesting. It's like that's also kind of dangerous because, like, hey, you have a 3-point shooting team who's capable of beating a high major team while only shooting 5 for 30 from 3-point range. That's kind of scary in a way because that means there's something beyond that too, something defensively, just in how they play. And maybe Kentucky just might not be that good, but I think that's a little scary when a team like that can still win even when the 3-point shot isn't falling. It's certainly a test. And they've been in the tournament a couple times, and I would anticipate they'll be the matchup. Delaware is a little bit of a different kind of animal, I guess. Much faster pace. They actually play at a faster pace than even Drake does. 81 possessions a game, which is bonkers. But again, it's like more like Purdue Fort Wayne, where it's really a lot of their points are scored in the paint. Bottom 10% in all of college basketball 3-point attempt rate. So they're not really looking to shoot threes, which I just think is like kind of a difficult ask if you're a mid-major that doesn't particularly seem to have that great a size to go up against a team like Iowa. It kind of just screams like, you're going to probably allow, with that pace, you're probably going to allow Iowa to play the free-flowing game that Iowa wants. I don't know. I wouldn't worry too much about maybe Delaware, but they're a good mid-major team. They could potentially beat Florida Gulf Coast. But from what I can tell, Florida Gulf Coast seems like a much trickier opponent because it just seems like more like a formula that's designed to be a team like Iowa. Delaware just kind of seems like they would just kind of play with Iowa, and I wouldn't necessarily be fearful of that kind of matchup. Yeah. Also, I guess I should also know about Florida Gulf Coast is Kentucky kind of got them on the glass a little bit. Again, they don't have great positional size, so I think there's probably some feasting to be had, whether it be from Hand or Sharon on the glass, Kate Martin on the glass potentially, Sid on the glass for sure. Iowa could potentially get them there as well. And I guess thinking about the potential final matchup, Kansas State's on the other side, which this is kind of interesting that they would be in the same tournament again. I don't feel any need to really go over Kansas State again because we all saw them for 40 minutes. We all know what they're capable of. Just looking at the other side, the only other team on that side I really want to address, just because it's hard. There's two mid-majors on the other side, and while I'm sure they're quality teams, it's just hard to see them getting by both Kansas State and North Carolina because those just seem like quality teams to me. But North Carolina is the only other team I really want to talk about. Number 18th nationally. And I kind of focus on pace of play because it's something that clearly Iowa has a preference right now as to how they want to play, which is fine. Hopefully we can grow into our half-court game a little bit as the season goes on. And it was really good in the straight game. I should point that out. But it's kind of interesting. North Carolina play very slow considering the competition play. Normally in these kind of games where you're blowing teams out, okay, you get a lot of runouts, you get a lot of layups, etc. Just because the other team might be turning the ball over, they might be overwhelmed athletically. So generally in a lot of these kind of high major versus mid-major kind of competition, the high major team generally plays at a faster pace than they would normally against maybe a team of similar talent level. It's kind of interesting then that North Carolina rates as slowly as they do, only 69 possessions a game. And they played in a close game against Davidson earlier in the year. So it's not like they've been blowing everyone out, but they blew their other three opponents out, yet they still don't really seem to be emphasizing pushing the ball that much. And again, it's kind of interesting because you look at their positional size, they have a lot of players in that 5'7" to 5'9" range. So a lot of players are really more along the height, in a similar height range to someone like Molly Davis, as opposed to someone like Caitlin Clark or Sid Affolter or Kate Martin from the guard standpoint. I thought that was kind of interesting. It's probably a lot of athleticism there. Potentially, I don't know, I guess. I would have to watch them play. So it's just kind of interesting that they would play at that slow of pace, considering that they seem to have a lot of short, you assume quick guards. You look at shotquality.com though, and this is something I thought I would shout out. So far this year, they're number 3 in adjusted shot quality defense. So they force their opponents to take really tough shots. Which again, okay, it's so you have a slow-paced team and a team who force you to take tough shots. They're going to, whatever team comes from the other side of the bracket is going to challenge Iowa defensively. They're going to challenge Iowa's offense with their defense, I should probably say. And again, those are kind of matches you want to see Iowa tested because you want Iowa to continue to grow as a team. This is all about progressively getting better to eventually get to the point where we want to be, which is national champions. You want challenges like that, and I think just looking at either Kansas State or North Carolina, Iowa's going to get a challenge there. We're going to know what our offense is capable of. though I guess speaking about their defense, it's weird. And again, particularly since they have the third rated defense in shot quality metrics, it's kind of interesting that how often they let teams shoot threes is very interesting. Last year they graded as one of the teams in all of D1 college basketball who gave up the most amount of threes. Eighth percentile allowing 3-point rate, which pretty much means they freely allowed their opponents to shoot threes. And so far this year, they're only 24th percentile, which is still pretty low. So both this year and last year, they've seemed very content to allow people to shoot threes, which again is also interesting because Kansas State is kind of more equipped to take away maybe a 3-point shooting of Iowa, just because they had a lot of like players in that 5'11" to 6'1" range that can really get out there and contest our shooters' shots well. But a team like North Carolina, who has like a lot of shorter guards, I don't know if they're going to be equipped to really make our 3-point shooting difficult. But again, I imagine they're probably going to be trying to get into our space and forcing us to put the ball on the floor. But again, if that's the case, then why do they allow teams to shoot so many threes? It's just kind of weird. I don't know. It's just kind of something to keep track on. They really freely allow teams to shoot threes. I'm just kind of curious to see, like, okay, like, how does that exactly go about? I guess, yeah, I don't know. And they also only get 42% of their points in the paint. North Carolina, they don't really rate really well in shot quality metrics on offense. And here they just don't generate a lot of points in the paint. Which again, considering the fact that they've played 4 mid-majors to this point, and really only one of those was a competitive game, it's kind of interesting they're not able to generate more easy looks. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of an interesting one. I don't know enough yet to say who we play. I will know, like, it'll be a challenge. No posts, I imagine some challenges defensively, either Kansas State or North Carolina, if Iowa can manage to get to that point. Which I guess isn't a guarantee because there's a couple good mid-majors that Iowa have to play along the way. But I would expect it to be a good one of those two in the final. Yeah. And I think it's streaming on Flow Sports or whatever that site's called. I'm a little trepidation about that just because I've only bought something on that site, whatever, one time. And that was when the men's basketball team played a holiday tournament a couple years ago. That was back when I was in school still. So I had time to maybe watch those games during the day between classes or whatever. And I vividly remember it not working very well. And considering the amount of site traffic that site's going to have just because of the amount of Iowa women's basketball team fans who are going to want to watch the team play, I have a little trepidation that I'm not sure if that site's... It might have gotten better because, again, that was the 17-18 season. So that would have been 6 years ago or so that I had like a little bit of... I dabbled a little bit in that streaming site, Flow Sports, but I have a little trepidation that it's not going to work really well for people. I'm expecting to hear complaints if I go on social media during that time, but who knows? Maybe it's gotten better, and we'll see. But yeah, I think it's a tournament you expect Iowa to win, but there's certainly challenges along the way. There's good mid-majors here, and you really shouldn't underestimate those kind of teams. Although Iowa, again, is trying to work itself up. We're a top 5 team. You just kind of expect for Iowa to win that. But anyway, I think that's really all I have to say. I think the next time I'll be doing one of these recaps will be like, I think we play a weekend game against like Bowling Green like the week after the Gulf Coast Showcase, I think. So that'll probably be the next time I see anybody for a recap or whatever. So anyway, I'll see y'all later. Catch you later.